Australia, what a beautiful country. However, wanting to face a bike trip to Australia is inevitable, sooner or later having to choose between two different schools of thought. The first, more rigorous, imposes a careful choice of the region to be crossed, and given that Australia is 25 times Italy, once identified the area and established the route, suggests a careful examination of the dangers that may be encountered. Starting then with the dreaded face-to-face with the deadly taipan, or one of its lesser-known, but not for that, or less deadly, sibling. Not forgetting the very dangerous funnel-web spider, however other particularly treacherous arachnids distributed throughout the territory deserve much attention. Scorpions, centipedes and similar animals should be avoided. It is highly recommended never to touch the plants. Here many are toxic and stinging. Should one be lured by the warm waters, caution is suggested, because saltwater crocodiles and a long line of sharks from tiger to white shark to mako infest the waters. Never place your feet on the sea floor to avoid contact with the deadly ringed octopus, or worse, with a shell that shoots venomous darts. Stepping on a stonefish or scorpionfish is highly inadvisable. It is also good to remember that there is no antidote to the venom of the box jellyfish, which is otherwise widespread. Always the first school of thought recommends obtaining a number of absolutely essential medications and therapeutic aids. Serums against snakes, serums against spiders, cortisone, adrenaline, antihistamines, antibiotics, painkillers, anesthetics, stitches, tourniquets and syringes as needed. The second school of thought, more fatalistic, shares with the first only the choice of route and suggests the choice lighter and less cumbersome solutions. I cannot say whether they are really effective, but all things considered, my choice is to travel in the company of a trusted friend. And no traveling companion could be better than Gerardo Gambaro, with whom we have already crossed many years ago, by bike, all over the Simpson Desert. That's how our project on the Munda Biddi Trail, which in the Aboriginal language means path through the forest, was born. A trail that runs entirely through the region of Western Australia and which, from Perth, leads to Albany. More than 1,000 tough kilometers with a hysterical elevation profile with 12,000 meters of elevation gain, almost all on dirt roads, and with 300 kilometers in single track. Gerardo from Auckland and I from Milan meet in Perth, the capital of Western Australia.
Pronto Gerardo? Certo, pronto. Allora alziamo il sipario, si va in scena. Coraggio.
For Gerardo, a mountain bike with 26 wheels in pure bikepacking style. For me, a 29er with hybrid equipment, pannier at the rear and bikepacking at the front. Placed the lucky beer cap on the fork, as tradition, but with the addition this time of a red coral horn. We leave Perth one spring morning. And it is a bike path that leads us out of town, and immediately Australia shows us its calling card. But it only takes a few kilometers to run into bad trouble. A strange noise draws Gerardo's attention, and looking closely at the bottom bracket, we discover that the inner chainring has lost 3 from the 4 locking bolts. Never happened such a thing. Having turned the wheels 180 degrees, we hurriedly returned to Perth to look for a solution. We had already eyeballed a store really well stocked, so we go in with a calm spirit, certain to find our missing bolts. And we do indeed find them. Too bad only that the inner crown, under stress, has ovalized and the holes no longer match. Impossible to fix it correctly. Bad trouble. For Gerardo, the front triple became a double. There will be much more work than expected from now on. We begin again, with the kangaroos returning to remind us where we are riding. And 30 kilometers east of Perth, the asphalt ends and our rock and roll in the southern hemisphere begins. And it is immediately Munda Biddi Trail, and we faithfully follow the track downloaded on the GPS. All gravel on that reddish bottom, so typical, so Australian, that will keep us company throughout the day of 100 kilometers, what it takes to become familiar with the pathway. And we return to see some asphalt a few kilometers before the town of Jarradale. It's been a long day, challenging, complicated and full of tension, and I have not yet absorbed the jet lag, so I arrive in town destroyed. that's really enough for today.
Banana.
Banana.
Coming out of Jarrahdale at dawn, it takes a few pedalings to find the sign that throws us back onto the Munda Biddi, and for the next 1,000 kilometers, these roads will be our home. Distant horizons, on roads that seem to have no end, and where for days you meet not a soul, except of course for the bush animals, kangaroos in abundance that often cross your path. Lots of emus by their typical and unmistakable friendly look. Billions of flies, which will mistake us for forest taxi drivers, as well as an endless variety of colorful parrots. And the very annoying and aggressive magpie, a species of crow that in spring has a habit of attacking those who approach their territory. They hit us with violent pecks on the head, and luckily we had helmets on. Here, in the forest of Western Australia, the presence of birds is so massive that sometimes when flying in flocks, you can't even hear your own voice.
C'è un casino.
Che parte andiamo?
Allora, silenzio! Comunque neanche Tarzan faceva di meglio. Cos'è che mi hai chiesto?
Da che parte andiamo?
Aspetta che guardo. Sempre detto. Dai. Possiamo ricominciare!
The roads, unpaved and reddish in color, look like wounds in the forest trees. Although the route is well marked, GPS really comes in handy to get confirmation of the direction. Because being off track in these parts can be really boring. The population centers, often microscopic, are far apart. Around there is nothing. One can rely only on what we are able to carry in the bags. To sleep along the way, one can rely sometimes on huts, where, apart from bedding for sleeping bag, you can refuel with rainwater collected in cisterns. Of course, it must be potable. With disinfectant, a mix and a half hour of aging, the fill is done. This is a route to be done in spring and autumn, because here in winter it is freezing, while in summer, after 5 minutes you have filled your water bottle, you can put your tea bag in it. A must stop is at Donnelly River, where the last census gave the presence of 5 inhabitants. To be precise, 3 men and 2 women. I, however, checked. There live more emus, by the way, very curious than people. After Donnelly River, a few miles of asphalt to quickly pass the community of Pemberton. And the usual sign shows us the road to follow, and that leads us to face in one of the most beautiful sections of the entire route. That of the Forest of Pemberton, where an interminable but spectacular single track has been carved out. Probably the most beautiful I have ever had the opportunity to ride. It is 50 uninterrupted kilometers, all to be covered quickly. Dry curves, fierce climbs, sudden descents, all wrapped in a forest where for thousands of years trees have adapted to live with partially burned trunks. For 40,000 years, fires have been part of this environment. It was the Aborigines who started these fires because they served to delimit the spread of fires caused by lightning and fueled by wind in the warmer and drier months. It takes 3 hours of pure, exhilarating fun before we see the road widen again. The single track stops abruptly a few meters before the entrance to Northcliffe, where even a sign proposes an embarrassing question. But where the hell is Northcliffe? It is actually easier to find its 300 inhabitants evenly distributed, one half playing cricket at the sports field and the other half at the tavern where we find food, beer and a bed.
Is it possible to do selfie? Yes, okay. And you have also accommodation for the night? Yes. Oh, wonderful. That's my place.
Western Australia is about 10 times the size of Italy and has 2,500,000 people. but 2,300,000 live in Perth. So, it is not much of a surprise that we pedal whole days without meeting a soul, neither on foot, nor on bikes, in motorcycles, nor in cars. The trail is carved out using also about 700 kilometers of very characteristic dirt roads throughout Australia. Only the tire tracks betray its use, although one would think very sporadic. Some unexpected setbacks are inevitable. It is part of the game.
Gerardo!
Just as inevitable are some uphill sections with challenging inclines, and loaded with weight as we are, and with Gerardo unable to use the small crown, we sometimes find ourselves putting our foot down and pushing. Gerardo has to check often that the ovalized crown has not shifted, ruining the frame. And when everything is okay, we start again, with the wheels in the south direction. Sometimes the ground surface changes not only in color but also in texture. And it is here that we most appreciate the successful choice of using generously sized tires, over 2 inches. We manage to float sufficiently on the sand, and not to suffer too much when some endless corrugated stretches appear, the deadly washboards. However, the route fatigues us a lot, and 100 kilometers are enough to reduce our energy and to induce us to look for a quiet place for the night.
Ok, vado a vedere com'è. Troppo casino qua, non ci fanno dormire. E cerchiamo un altro, qui è impossibile davvero, credimi.
Ok.
It is true that in the vicinity there are no other huts, but a careful consultation of the map gives us civilian presence a few kilometers away.
The first attempt is not lucky. Everything is closed here. Damn it. It's Sunday. Who could remember? There is no way to get even a coffee. One can only stock up honey, put there on display and for sale, relying on the honesty of the customer. We have to pedal another 20 kilometers, fortunately on asphalt, before we see the whirlpool sign. Tonight we won't have to use a sleeping bag. Food, beer and fun await us, starting with the typical Australian one of darts. Okay, here I'm poor, but I'm good on billiard. Damn, but I lose again.
There are just over 200 kilometers to go, and the route, while more or less following the outline of the coast, takes us a little further inland, remaining always shrouded in seemingly almost impenetrable vegetation. From the top of a rock sacred to the Aborigines, the view is sincerely impressive. All around us, as far as the eye can see, nothingness, except of course for immense forest that covers much of the surface of Western Australia. And down, there is a safe place to spend the night.
Hai visto me che si infila un ragno del cunicolo? 10 passi e sei morto. Siamo in Australia qua.
We are going quickly into another valley, very peculiar, of the Munda Biddi Trail, the Valley of the Giants, so called because of the presence of a phenomenally large species of eucalyptus, more than 400 years old. Some of these authentic plant giants are more than 50 meters high. From the trail, after 2 weeks, we can finally see a glimpse of the Gulf of Albany, our destination, and approaching Albany, the whole landscape becomes softer. We always ride on a dirt trail, but looking around, the vegetation is less dense, and the eye can scan more distant horizons. The last obstacle is a challenging climb, probably the steepest of the entire route. It consists of a series of hairpin bends on terrain where, due to the gradient, at times the wheel loses grip, forcing us to put our foot down.
Questa è stata dura.
The climb leads to the Albany wind farm. where 18 wind turbines produce 80% of the electricity needs of the entire city. We finished the last supplies of beef jerky before completely exhausting the energy left in our legs for the last few kilometers. A descent, steep and fun, brings us nicely back into contact with the ocean shore. Our Munda Biddi Trail practically ends here, with the last few pedal strokes taking us to see Albany just across the Gulf. All that remains are the last tedious formalities of the journey. That is, the slow crossing of the city to get to the marker that marks the exact point where the trail ends. We still miss a small nostalgic detail, which prompts us to remember the many Italian compatriots who emigrated to Australia. For us this evening, pizza and beer.